Well, greetings, my beloved clients and friends. Yesterday was our Christmas party, so for those that made it, great seeing you. Thanks for coming out. And those that didn't, maybe we'll see you next year. Anyways, there was a question came up on one of the tables. They asked me, Jonathan, what is Bitcoin? And I said, well, why don't I do this? I'll make you guys a video and explain it to you that way, because it's kind of not an easy question to answer. So to understand what is Bitcoin, I think it'd be a good place to start to understand what is money. So money is a medium of exchange. So for example, let's say you wanted to acquire a cow, and it just so happened that your neighbor had a cow and he was trying to get rid of it. And so you went to your neighbor and say, hey, I heard you're trying to get rid of that cow, and I'm actually looking for a cow. And he said, yeah, actually I am. And so he said, and you're like, can I have it? And he's like, well, I got bills and stuff too, so I mean, what would you give me for it? And this is pre-money. And so you say, well, I got some chickens. Would you take maybe 3 or 4 chickens for it? He's like, nah. He's like, what else do you got? I go, well, I could give you a basket of potatoes for that cow. Would you take that? He's like, no, I got enough potatoes. Anything else? And you're like, well, I know how to pull teeth. I'll pull one of your teeth for you in exchange for that cow. And he's like, you know what? I'm really not. I do want to get rid of my cow, but none of those things really interest me. And so unfortunately, the two of you both walk away a little bit unsatisfied, because he actually did want to get rid of that cow and you actually did want it, but you couldn't find anything that you both wanted to trade for, right? So money creates a medium of exchange where, throughout the course of the week, if there was money, right, and you sell some chickens in exchange for money, now you got some money. And then you go out and you sell some potatoes in exchange for money, and you go out and pull teeth in exchange for some money, and you put that money together. And then you go to your neighbors and you go, hey, I want to buy that cow from you. And he comes up with a price in terms of money, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm willing to give you that much money. And he says, I'm willing to take that much money. And you exchange the money, and then he goes and buys whatever he wants with that money. He's not limited to what you have, right? It's like at Christmas time you give someone a gift card, because it's like, just buy whatever you want, because I don't know exactly what you want. And then they'll say, write you a letter, thank you for this gift, it was exactly what I wanted, right? So money is a medium of exchange. It's also a store of value, and you see how it's very helpful to promote commerce, right? Because that deal couldn't have gotten done without money, but with money that deal got done very easily. And it's also a store of value, because you didn't need to sell that chicken and those potatoes and that teeth pulling services at the exact time that you wanted to buy a cow. That could have happened over a period of weeks or months, and you build up some money, and then finally the day came that you took it, and that value was good, right? That money was just as good 2 weeks later as it was 2 weeks ago, which you couldn't say the same for, say, a crate of tomatoes, right? It doesn't store its value as well as, or a gallon of milk or whatever. It doesn't store its value as well as money does. Okay, so that's what money is. And it obviously, you can see how it really promotes commerce. And so who makes money, or where does money come from? Well, it comes from the government, right? If a government wants to promote commerce, they'll print money so that the people in their realm or country or whatever can exchange in that currency. Like in America, we exchange in US dollars. You go over to Mexico, they exchange in their money created by their government, Mexican peso, right? You go over to India, they exchange in their money, in Indian rupees, right? So each government makes its own money. The US Treasury, right, they print money, but in quotes, the government. But there's another place money comes from. I think it was my second semester in college. A professor said, "Where does money come from?" And he raised his hand up like this. He goes like this. He goes like that. He goes, "It comes out of thin air. Bankers make it." And that statement stuck with me and it fascinated me. Because of that statement, I chose to study economics. He was my economics teacher, Econ 101. I said, that is powerful. That is exciting. That's sexy. That's what I want to do. I want to know about that. That's what I studied, was economics, because of that. And so bankers make money. And the way bankers make money is, so going back to money, so now whatever you do, chickens or potatoes or teeth pulling, you acquire some money and you're saving it up. And once you got a certain chunk of it, you kind of got scared because someone could take it from you. And it's just as good to them as it is to you, right? How do I keep it safe? You know, what if I lose it, or what if my house burns down or someone comes and steals it? I need a place safe to keep it, you know, and so banks started being a place where people would save their money, and it'd be there in safekeeping, and then you could know, hey, my money's safe. Whenever I need it, I just go to the bank and get it, and I could go spend it. Well, the bankers noticed that this money kind of started piling up, and people didn't, you know, come for it right away, and it was just sitting there kind of doing nothing until these people were ready to use it. And the bankers said, well, what if we just lent some of it out and put it back before the people came and asked for it? They'll never know. It's not going to hurt them. And there's enough there that you know, because not everybody comes at the same time or asks for all of it at once. So we should be fine. And they did. That's what they did. They started lending it out, making interest, putting it back before anyone was the wiser. But there's a danger. It's like, what if they make a bad loan and they're not able to put it back? Now they got to earn that money back, and that had happened several times, and people would lose money in the bank, and when they hear about it, you better be the first one to get yours, because not everybody's is there anymore because they've been giving it out, right? So, and then banks had to become regulated like FDIC, but prior to that, banks have been tumbling. There've been runs on the banks throughout history. It was a big deal, and so money makes commerce. It facilitates commerce, right, as a store of value and a medium of exchange. But the government's involved in, like, for example, I'm planning a trip to Vietnam, and one of our dollars is worth 60,000 of their money. So you could buy a sandwich for like 100,000 of their currency. I don't know, I forgot what it's called. That's what it costs. And why does it cost 100,000 to buy a sandwich? And did they start out that way? Like when they started minting the money, we're gonna say, yeah, in order to buy a sandwich, you're gonna have to have 100,000 of these. No, what happened was, a long time ago, probably a sandwich was $1 or $2, and then the government just kept printing more money because they could, and it made the value of money not that much. So now a sandwich is 100,000, right? And so that's a problem, because money is to a certain degree controlled by the government and by the banks, and the banks could mess up too. Like, I talked to you about those runs on the banks, and there was a huge one in 2008 called the global financial crisis, where throughout the 2000s, banks were just giving anybody money, hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy a house. And they lost all their discipline as far as who they should give money to. And so sure enough, they started giving money to people that couldn't pay, and it completely blew up. And the global financial system was within hours of completely falling apart. Really, it was really bad. It was bad, but it was actually worse than you think it was. And in the last hour, powers that be came in and saved it, including Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett had a big part to play in really saving the global financial system at the last minute. And so, but out of that 2008 financial crisis, there became a growing distrust and distaste for governments and banks being involved with our money, right? They're the ones that control it. And is that such a great idea? Because bankers make bad choices. Governments aren't really good at managing stuff, as you can see from the DMV or whatever. And so there was this movement called Occupy Wall Street. At the end of the day, after they almost destroyed everything, they fixed it and pat themselves on the back, and no one got in trouble for it. And millions of people lost a lot of wealth. They lost houses and they lost fortunes, and these guys on top just walked away. So there was this big distrust and dissatisfaction. There's got to be a better way. And out of that, around 2009 or 2010, this guy, I use that term loosely, named Satoshi Nakamura, something like that, wrote this white paper. And no one knows who this guy is. It might be a group of individuals, or there's no certainty as to where this white paper came from. And it described a Bitcoin, the blockchain, and a new form of currency out of frustration with the current situation that we have. And they said this currency, it would be a medium of exchange. It would be a store of value, just like money, but it wouldn't be controlled by the banks or the government. It would be controlled by the people. And it's on the blockchain, and there's checks and balances, but it's not the government and it's not the banks. And so it kind of started getting a following, and kind of like a cult-like following. And I remember I was talking to a client one time. I was telling him about Bitcoin, and he goes, "Yeah, but isn't that used by a lot of questionable people for nefarious purposes?" I go, "Yeah, that's true. But guess what else is used by these questionable people for nefarious purposes? Money." Right? Cash. That's, if they drugs and human trafficking and weapons and stuff, that's just kind of transacted in cash too, right? And the problem is with those players in those nefarious markets, money doesn't work that good for them, right? Because the government is on to them, and the banks don't want them, and so it's hard for them. They got all this cash and they don't know how to move it, and it's just an issue, right? Money laundering, and it's because they can't get around the government and the banks and with all this money. And so if anybody would be interested in an alternative to money, would be those people. So obviously they were the early adopters. They were among the early adopters of Bitcoin as a currency, because it solved a lot of their problems. it evaded the watchful eyes of the government and the bank, right? So you could say it was the proof of concept. It proved that what this guy was saying was correct. It is a medium of exchange, and it is a store of value, and it does avoid the control. It is outside the control of the banks and the governments. That's why these people like to use it. So, and it started to grow in popularity, and it started, just been getting momentum over this last decade plus. But who do you think is threatened by the rise in popularity of Bitcoin? Governments and banks, right? Because it takes control out of their hands. So there was a lot of opposition, and there has been a lot of opposition from governments and banks. Obviously, it's not in their interest to give up control, and so there's that's been the thing holding it back from going more mainstream. And there's also been some technicalities as far as, they tried to use it to, you can't just, it was too slow when they're trying to, go to a grocery store and swipe your card and pay in Bitcoin. And there's a few little glitches and stuff. So, but a lot of the things that it promised, it seems like it was able to do. And there was this thing it's going to get shot down, because if a powerful interest doesn't want it, they could stop it. There's a good chance that they could, until it gets so popular that they can't. Like, for example, let's say electric vehicles. Well, who stands to lose from electric vehicles? The big oil companies and the big car manufacturers, right, who are very, very powerful and have very, very powerful friends. So they could try to stop it and block it and say no, and influence that to not take hold in society. But if at the end of the day it's a viable product that a lot of people want, at some point they're going to have to say, and like the car makers are going to say now, hey, we can't beat them. We're going to start making them too. At least we want to be part of it. If we can't shoot it down, we want to be part of it. And so back to Bitcoin, the governments and banks have done a lot to slow the popularity of Bitcoin and the uses and stuff like that. But throughout all that, it still continued to gain momentum, and it seems like there are signs that the governments and the banks are maybe starting to say, well, if we can't beat it, maybe we should just be part of it, or at least we might be able to get our hands into it somehow. You know what I mean? It's too popular. We can't shut it down. And in March of this year, Wall Street allowed Bitcoin to trade on their exchange. Right? Prior to that, it wasn't. So if you wanted to trade Bitcoin, you had to go on some other exchange. And those exchanges, most of them are gone. Many of them famously have blown up, FTX and Binance, and people have lost millions because, those exchanges did blow up, and there was a lot of, they're unregulated. There's just a lot of stuff going on in those markets and made it risky. But even with all that, Bitcoin's popularity did not continued to grow, And so in March, the Wall Street said, okay, we'll let you trade it on our exchange, which is huge. That was in March, and right away it went to about 40 and then to 60,000 for a Bitcoin. So it had this big pop as a result of that. And then in November, the U.S. voted in an administration that is kind of pro Bitcoin, right? And so in the last month, Bitcoin has gone from about 60 to about 100. And because the excitement, like, hey, maybe they're going to stop fighting it. And they, like they say, if you can't beat them, join them. And it could be a new dawn for Bitcoin because it has, the government seems to say, okay, if this is going to happen, we better just make sure it happens under our watchful eye and sure it happens right, and do what we can to protect the people, kind of thing, and or protect their own interests. And so that's what's happening in Bitcoin recently. So it's gotten a lot of attention. This guy named Gary Gensler, who was the head of the SEC, was anti-Bitcoin, and Trump has got rid of him and put in a new guy that is pro-Bitcoin. He also, just on Friday, I believe, 2 days ago, he appointed a guy into his administration, to his cabinet, a guy named David Sachs, to be the AI and crypto czar. So he's got a pro-Bitcoin guy that's on his team that's to push this thing forward, and under the government's, I guess, watchful eye or blessing, however you want to say it. So it seems like, there's a lot of positivity around Bitcoin. And so to answer your question, what is it? And, maybe more importantly, why is it in the news? Is because it seems to be ready to go mainstream, ready to kind of cross that chasm. And so, but I'm about to cross this treacherous river here. Ooh. I want to clarify one thing. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. It's on the blockchain, and it's one of many, many cryptocurrencies. It's the largest, most established one. And when they say Bitcoin, they're talking about just one. They're not talking about the entire cryptocurrency market. There's other ones like Ethereum and Solana and Cardano and Ripple. And then there was one of the news. This girl made a video and she said this thing called Haktua, and she ended up making a cryptocurrency, a meme coin, and it crashed phenomenally. So that is not Bitcoin. It's a cryptocurrency, but it's not Bitcoin. And people confuse it. And that's if you don't understand the difference between cryptocurrency in general and Bitcoin, which is just one particular cryptocurrency, be very careful, because there's many of these cryptocurrencies that one feature of them is that they're traded. So speculators are involved in these things, and the only value is what the next person will pay for it. And it's easy to scam that next person to pay more for it than you did, right? And to run it up and to get in and get out and make money, and for that other guy to get in and get out and lose money because it has no value, right? So be very careful. It's like, for example, Apple is a stock, but Apple isn't every stock, right? And someone could mistakenly say, oh, I trade apples. What do you mean you trade apples? Yeah, I trade apples, like Apple and Microsoft and Target and Home Depot and Chipotle and Nvidia. Apples. I trade apples. And he's obviously using the word wrong. Stocks does not mean apples. Apples does not mean stocks. Apple is one stock, right? So when people say Bitcoin, sometimes they incorrectly are referring to the entire crypto market. And that's a very dangerous mistake to make, because Bitcoin has some legitimacy. Most of these other ones do not. Okay, so just one thing I want to be clear, that Bitcoin is just one cryptocurrency. It's not the whole market, and it's not all of them. Okay, so be very careful with your vocabulary. And so hope that answers your question. As far as Bitcoin is concerned, I think it has a real exciting potential. And I'll give you an example because so Bitcoin has been going up. Like I said, 5 years ago, you could have got one for $10,000, and now a Bitcoin is $100,000. So imagine if you were interested in buying a car and that car cost $50,000. Well, 5 years ago, you would have needed 5 Bitcoins to buy that car, right? Because they were each $10,000. Today, to buy that same car, you'd only need a half of 1 Bitcoin because Bitcoins have gone up faster than the car has. And you know, this is why we see stuff going up, because the dollar's going down, because the banks mismanage it and the government mismanaged it. Biden spent too much of it, and so that creates inflation. It makes everything else more expensive, but if the money is going up faster than the rest of the stuff, that makes the rest of the stuff cheaper. So if you think, wow, if I would have been buying and selling stuff in Bitcoin, the price of stuff has been going down for me. But now I'm stuck spending stuff in money and the price of stuff is going up for me. I think I'd rather buy and sell stuff in Bitcoin. Wouldn't that be cool if the price of stuff generally went down because your medium of exchange was holding its value and actually maybe increasing its value? Because there's only, the way the guy designed it, is Satoshi Nakamoto, there's only ability for them to make 20,000 of them, and then it's done. And it's very complicated to explain how he does that. That's the blockchain and this Bitcoin mining. That's something for another video. But suffice it to say that it has that. That's one of the enticing characteristics of it, is that once it's all made, they can't be anymore, and then you could just exchange it for what's existing out there. That's what makes it interesting as a store of value and as a possible investment. So we like it as an investment. Bitcoin specifically, not cryptocurrency in general, okay? But it's not for every appetite. There is some volatility to it, but it does seem to be gaining ground from who we would expect to be its largest opponents and the ones that could hold it back, meaning banks and governments. And so that gives us a lot of excitement around Bitcoin. So hope that answers your question. And if you want to talk more about it, just give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you. So happy holidays, everybody. Have a wonderful day.